to Travolting, covering White Man's Burden. Enjoy the episode. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
That is right, folks. You're coming to us after our Pulp Fiction episode. Thank you so much for listening last week.
What a great fucking episode that was.
We had a great time recording that. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did broadcasting or recording it.
Yeah.
As we promised at the end there, this week we're covering a movie that is definitely not a misstep in Travolta's career, and is part of his like straight line of hits after Pulp Fiction.
Only A-list. Only A-list.
Only A-list for this A-list era, because this is the A-list era.
Yeah.
And
Jeff?
the movie is called White Man's Burden.
White Man's Burden.
Which is already a bad look. This is the most illegal movie ever made. And I'm deeply distressed we have to talk about it.
Why is this movie not as like difficult to find as...
Oh, it's very difficult to find.
But is it as difficult as some of his most other...
I had to order a DVD off eBay.
How much did it cost you?
It was like $10.
Do you remember what Eyes of an Angel you had to get the VHS for?
Yeah,
though.
the VHS.
This deserves like a beta tape on eBay.
Yeah.
Nothing more than that. It deserves to be that hard to find.
This is a lot.
And for the audience, let's make something very clear. Jeff and I are two very white Caucasian men.
Yes.
Who cannot, in any sense of the imagination, understand whatsoever the full comprehensive
experience of Black America.
Yeah.
You know what this movie does think it can do, though? Is exactly that.
It's exactly that.
This movie is the most 90s, like, colorblind,
Tone deaf.
We're all the same if we just look past each other's skin, like, movie ever. That just is like, it ignores the systemic and institutional problems.
Yeah, and
in service of telling like a really boring crime story.
And hitting home just with this color blindness, it doesn't then take away the archetypal stereotypes, racist stereotypes that this film preserves within the characters that they're personifying. So let's right away get the premise off so people know why we're begrudging this so much. And then we talk about the pretext to this, like how this movie came to be, and then we talk about the plot and its effect. Is that cool?
Yeah. So this movie is, the tagline for this movie is, in a world of right and wrong, justice is seldom black or white.
So this movie is built on a thought experiment.
Yes.
Which is, what if in a parallel universe, black people were in the social hierarchy and structure
as white people. What if they were culturally white people, just with different color skin?
Yes. And what if white people were culturally black people, but white?
Yes.
So it's like, what if all the white people had to experience what the black people had to experience? And what if all the black people had to experience what all the white people had to experience?
It's a premise.
You can already see, fellow reader, comrade, brother, sister, the issues with this premise.
Yes.
Jeff and I are drinking alcoholic beverages during this.
Needed it.
Needed it. This was very difficult to watch in many aspects.
Yes.
One aspect is it's very difficult to watch the tone deafness of this film. It's very difficult to see...
watch Travolta's performance in this movie.
Well, it's very difficult to watch the confidence that the choices that are being made.
Yes.
Very difficult for me to watch. Like, John Travolta talks in this movie.
Yes.
He talks with an accent.
Yes.
He talks with
He's the only actor in this movie doing it.
And he's the only actor doing this accent. And to audience, the best way I can describe it is it is a stereotypically racist accent of a poor black person.
Yes.
At least that's what he's trying to personify.
If
The lingo he's using.
I am not going to do the accent, but if you Google "white man's burden," you can watch scenes on YouTube, and you can find a scene of Travolta
that demonstrates
yes,
what we're
that
talking
demonstrates
about.
what he's doing.
Because we certainly will not.
Yes.
But it made me very uncomfortable to
Yes.
watch this, and I can only...
None of the white actors in this movie are also doing that. Now the black actors
No.
are trying to do like an impression of white America.
Yeah.
It's just Travolta, and one can only assume he was like being given a lot of like support in that choice.
Who recommended the role for him, Jeff?
Quentin Tarantino.
Who produced this movie?
Quentin Tarantino. He financed this movie
He financed this movie.
because he probably thought, like, your typical oblivious white person. He's like, oh, this seems like a really smart way to point out the problems of racism.
You remember like a week ago when we were like praising Quentin Tarantino for this masterwork piece called Pulp Fiction? And oh, how quickly
Yeah, I wrote
took,
Tarantino is now my enemy.
how quickly it was for then him to make such a bad decision.
Yes. And Travolta.
And Travolta faces all of the grief for it.
Yes.
Because Tarantino's name isn't really anywhere on this movie. Mm-hmm. You have to like Google to find out that Tarantino like financed and
Was involved. This movie was not directed by Tarantino.
No, it was
It
not.
was directed by Desmond Nakano, who's a Japanese American. He said he created this film because to both blacks and whites, he was a them. He's like, I felt like I was alienated from both cultures, and so I wanted to make a movie about like the conflict between them from like the outside observer. And I don't necessarily think that translates in the movie.
It certainly doesn't.
It feels less like someone with that kind of perspective and more like a movie about... It tries to both sides the issue in this movie.
It does.
Like-
and on top of that, so I was having a lot of conversations with other people about this. And something that we all talked about is like, if you were going to do like a social thought experiment about the displacement of the races in the country and sort of paint an illustration of like, well, if you were facing this discrimination for your skin color, but just reverse, like how bad would you feel? But the context is missing. Mm. And what I mean by that is like there is a culture of the African American community in the black community and they get discriminated for those aspects of their culture. Mm. In this movie, it ties over those cultural aspects to the thought experiment of the white people.
Which, if this movie was going to try and be interesting, you would swap, the cultures would stay the same.
Yes.
This movie is like, what if white people had black culture?
And what if black people had white culture?
Instead of what if black culture was the dominant culture?
And what if white culture was the discriminated culture?
Yes.
It does not do that.
I'm not saying that sounds like a good movie, but it's at least a take.
Right. But this movie is like if somebody sat in a typewriter and thought, I want to make a movie where the white people are the black people and the black people are the white people. So to make the white people the black people, what do I got to do? Make them dumb, make them uneducated, make them poor,
Yeah.
make them aggressive and violent.
Yes. It's awful. This movie is this is in contention for the worst movie I've ever seen. This is so offensive. It's so wrong.
Yeah.
And I hate that we have to talk about it. I really do.
I really hate that we have to talk about it too. But I think you and I both agree, Jeff, that this doesn't have to be a really long episode.
The thing that's really like painful about this is just that you can tell how everyone involved in it thought they were so woke. Yeah. Like they were like, we're really making a point here.
Yeah.
And instead of knowing that they were missing the point and like whatever. Oh, so bad.
Yeah. And on top of that, like there's not much interesting things to talk about in this movie outside of its premise. Yeah. Because the plot of it is pretty bone dry as well.
Yeah, the thing is it's such a standard crime movie.
Yeah.
There's no like interesting like element to this.
Mm-mm. Yeah. We're 10 minutes.
This movie stars John Travolta and inexplicably Harry Belafonte, who was a major civil rights icon He sang the Banana Boat song. Hadn't really acted in a lead role in a while. Like, he's the Deo guy. And marched in the civil rights movements of the 60s. Has been involved, like, in... I don't know why he's in this movie. But he is. Let's just start the movie.
Okay.
So it starts. It's already illegal. It starts with a montage of a chocolate factory. It looks like a poop factory. Like I was not aware this was candy until like maybe 30, maybe like 2 minutes in.
But he's like, it's like these white bars being covered in chocolate.
Yes.
And packaged for distribution. We're in a factory. Symbolism. Who is packing that?
John Travolta. Playing Louis Pinnock. Which is a real name that definitely exists.
He is he's a plant worker at this little chocolate factory. Mm-hmm. He's an Oompa Loompa.
Yeah. Oompa Loompa.
I can't make jokes during this podcast. I can't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You came here for any like funny bits.
Meanwhile,
White Castle's trash. We like episode 8. His hair is really boring. There.
Yeah.
There's our bits.
We're just hair ranking music now.
Okay.
Where's the hair going? Tell me.
It's pretty boring hair.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to just like bash this movie and all aspects of it, which I would and I will, but in pure, transparent, objective, honest sense, his hair is boring.
Yes.
It's just regular hair. So I would put this below Look Who's Talking Now.
Look Who's Talking Now?
Or no. Put it below... Put it below Eyes of an Angel, above Boy in the Plastic Bubble.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, that was the hair rank.
That was the hair ranking. We're going to get our bits done and out of the way because there's just not a lot of room for like comedy in this one.
Yeah. Jack Nicholson is still in my apartment.
That bit lasts an entire fucking week.
Hey. No, that's not actually happening. But yeah, they're in the chocolate factory.
He's a plant worker.
He's doing his accent.
I immediately wrote down, why the fuck is he talking like that?
You know what this movie is? Did you ever see that old commercial where it's like the kid and he has like a white egg and a brown egg and he cracks them both and opens them and they look the same on the inside?
Right.
In spite of being like you need to tear people open to like see if they're the same on the inside, that whole point of that is like it's missing the point. It's tone deaf. It's like it's a nice idea, but it's missing the fact that it's not about, just we're all the same on the inside. It's like, no, there's society. We are different, and it's the differences that we celebrate that make our culture so great.
Yeah.
And this movie's like, what if we just swapped it? And what if we just acknowledge that we're all the same on the inside? Because it doesn't matter what your culture is like. It's like, no, culture is very important.
Yeah, and it ignores the deep-rooted societal impacts.
Yeah.
It's really hard to like understand this premise down to the bone because in most other creative contexts, when you're building a world, you have a large history of that world that may not be within the presence of the movie, but you can at least answer and plant Easter eggs to allude to. So I say this because, there have been other like thought experiment PSAs done similar to this. One in particular, I'm going to try to look this up. There was one, while I look this up, what happens after the plant worker thing?
So he's at work, and he's sent on a job. He has to drive an envelope to the boss's mansion, which is Harry Belafonte's mansion. And he drives there. He hands the envelope off to the maid, and while he's standing in the yard, he looks up and he sees Harry Belafonte's wife wearing a towel. And Harry Belafonte sees him and is like, this guy's lusting after my wife, when he was just looking. So he tells the owner of the plant, he's like, don't send that guy around here anymore. Travolta goes home after that, not aware he's going to be fired, and hangs out with his family. Do you know who his son is, Stuart?
Who is his son?
His name is Andrew Lawrence. He's the brother of the kid in Chains of Gold.
No.
He is.
No.
Do you know who he also is?
No.
The kid in this movie.
What?
He's the director of a movie. Do you know what that movie's called?
Andrew Lawrence?
Yeah.
No fucking way.
He is the director of Money Plane. Yes. That is right. The kid in White Man's Burden is the director of Money Plane. The Adam Copeland, Kelsey Grammer vehicle that we all know and love. That I'm currently holding a Blu-ray of in my hand. I will post a picture on our Twitter and Instagram as proof the day this episode comes out.
While you were explaining that, I did find the short film that I was talking about.
Yeah.
It's a PSA about portraying what it would be like if being a homosexual, gay, lesbian, bi, if being all those was the norm.
Yeah.
And if being hetero was a discriminated sexuality. Yeah. It's called Love Is All You Need. I think you can probably look it up on YouTube. But there are other short films, PSAs, that try to like paint a similar kind of like brush to this problem.
So you can't paint with a wide brush like this.
You can't.
These are nuanced topics, and it requires nuance to work it, not a crime movie where you just swap the races.
Yeah.
It's... Dear God.
So anyway, what part?
He goes to work the next day and he gets fired because
he was snooping on...
And he says, you can't fire me, I need my paper. And in a very offensive accent.
Yeah.
He's like, I need my paper. Yeah. It's everyone thought they were so woke making this. Yeah. I just, my note at this point just says ugh. He can't get work. He gets evicted from his home. He's not allowed to go with his wife and son to his mother-in-law's because mother-in-law doesn't like him, thinks he's a deadbeat.
Yeah.
So he kidnaps Harry Belafonte.
Yeah, he kidnaps the...
And he's like, I want the money you owed me, not a cent more or less, just the money I would have gotten had I not been fired. He takes him to the bank, but the bank can't get him money until Monday.
Because it's closed.
Yes, closed.
What a plot point.
What a plot point. So he doesn't know what to do. He has this guy kidnapped, this rich guy. So he brings him to Stanley, who lives in an abandoned factory.
A factory?
Yeah, it's like an abandoned factory or something.
I thought it was just an abandoned home.
It might have been an abandoned building of some other sort. And this movie kind of becomes like Enemy Mine, but with race. Whereas like they have to work, they have to learn they're not so bad.
They because it's like, kind of turns into
We're
like
not so different, you and I.
It's a mini road trip movie where they're just kind of like stuck together and they have to like see each other's side of the equation.
And they go to a burger joint, and there's a skinhead gang who tries to fight them, and then one of them gets shot. Yeah. And then they leave. And they go back with Stanley, who gets me like, you can't have this guy in my house. And Travolta's like, yes, I will.
And that's the end of that conversation.
Yeah, that's the end of that conversation. There really isn't much in the way of plot.
No, there isn't.
The whole time Harry Belafonte's like, you seem like a nice guy. You shouldn't be doing this. Travolta's like, you put me in this situation, man. I can't believe you did this to me. And Harry Belafonte's like, I don't remember firing you. And he's like, I didn't mean to fire you. And Travolta's like, that doesn't change the facts. But for some reason, they get to like each other. Yeah. I wrote "make it stop" in my notebook.
I wrote down I can no longer pay attention.
Yes. This movie just misses the point in every way.
I had to smoke 4 cigarettes in the middle of this movie. Do you want to talk about the action figure gag?
Yeah, so like 2/3 of the way through the movie, there's this really weird sequence. So weird. Yeah. It's like comic relief where Troll's like, it's my son's birthday. I promised him I'd go buy him a toy. So he ties up Harry Belafonte in the truck.
And then invites his kid in the truck.
Yeah, invites his kid in the truck with this man, with this guy who's tied up. And there's like this comic music. It's like steel drum like comedy. It was like do 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 do.
Remember like in Urban Cowboy when he was trying to kidnap not Sissy Spacek. Who was in Urban Cowboy?
Deborah Winger.
Deborah Winger. Remember when he was trying to kidnap Deborah Winger? And if you put, and it was like banjo music, but if you put any other music in there, it would be like a horror movie.
Yes.
That's what this scene is. That they put steel drums in this, and it somehow makes it funny and light and whimsical.
Yes.
Yeah. What are you looking up, Jeff?
Nothing. I'm just trying to schedule an episode in the future. Because I don't want to talk about this one. But it's a weird scene. They go to the toy store. And the kid, Andrew Lawrence, director of Money Plane, goes in. And he grabs a black Superman. And Travolta's like, I don't have the money for that. He's like, pick the white one. The kid's like, I want the black one.
And there's like, if there's like 10 different types of action figures, 9 of them are black, 1 of them is white.
Yeah.
Which is supposed to be this nuanced way of saying, like, you know, how there's like all these white action figures and not a lot of black action figures. But all the black kids want the white action figure.
Yeah.
Because the white kid in this movie wants the black action figure.
Yeah. Something like that.
A little weird.
Yeah, very strange.
A little odd. A little strange.
It's almost like this movie was not well considered.
Yeah.
Anyway, they go back to the burger joint.
He tries to escape.
Well, first, the Travolta's pouring salt on his ketchup. And Harry Belafonte's like, why are you doing that? And Travolta's like, well, you see, if you put salt on the fries, it just falls off of them. But if you put salt in the ketchup, you can control the quota, the ratio. I just had like word spasm. The ratio of salt to fry. And everyone's like, that's a good idea. It's like, that sounds awful. It's like a bad idea.
Well, I don't know if they're trying to like.
I don't know what the point of that is.
I don't know what the point.
It's trying to like. It's trying to be some like Tarantino has a cult like character building exercise. It just doesn't work.
So then he tries to escape.
Well, first Travolta goes up.
God damn it.
Well, no, Travolta goes up to grab more food, and there's the least dramatic whip pan I've ever seen in my life. Like, normally if you want to show, like, surprise, it's like, the camera just really quickly turns. It, like, moves at, like, a decent pace, shows the empty table, and then back to Troy. He's like, ah, shit. And he runs after Harry Belafonte.
And then Harry, his character name is Thaddeus.
Thaddeus.
Yeah.
Thad.
Thad.
I wrote in my notebook this movie is a violation of the Geneva Conventions.
So Thad breaks into a white family's home.
Yes, and of course they point a gun at him.
A little girl has a gun.
And he's like, what has my racism done? What hath I wrought? And then he escapes before he can be killed, and Travolta finds him, but he's having a heart attack.
Are we already at the end of the movie?
Yeah, we are at the end of the movie.
Fuck, I'm so happy we did this. We got through it so quickly.
It's not the fact that we don't want to talk about this. It's
there's also just not a lot to talk about.
There's nothing to talk about in the plot.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. This is worse than Chains of Gold in terms of nothing happening.
Yeah.
It's worse than Moment by Moment in terms of nothing happening.
It honestly is, though. It's such a by-the-numbers plot where nothing happens, nothing develops, and the point that it's trying to make falls flat on its face.
Yeah.
So, Thad is having like a heart attack.
Yes.
And so he drags Thad into the truck and is trying to get him to hospital.
Yeah, and he tries to, the truck won't start.
Yeah.
And he flags down a car, and it's a white woman. And he's like, help me get this guy. And she sees it's a black guy and drives off. And it's like, the white people are racist too, you know? That's what this movie's trying to say. It's like it's like Crash. Everyone's a little racist. And that's all part of the problem.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that no one likes Crash anymore.
But Jeff, did you know it won Best Picture?
I did.
Because Hollywood is broken.
And so Travolta's solution is he drags him in the middle of the street and starts shooting windows, setting off alarms.
So the cops arrive.
Yes. And then Stanley's there, and he's like, why are you doing this, man? And you can see...
Stanley's there for like half of these moments.
And you can see the cops coming, and Stanley's like, we gotta go. And he just stands there for like 2 minutes. I wrote, why is Stanley still here? And he's like, we gotta go. And Travolta and Stanley are just standing there. And Travolta's still holding the gun. Like, throw the gun down.
Cops show up.
The cops show up, shoot Travolta.
Travolta dies.
Yes, Travolta dies very quickly. He's like, hey, and then they shoot him.
Yeah.
It's like, you see, the cycles of racism just continue on.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to Travolta's family's house. Harry Belafonte shows up having been saved by Travolta's selfless act. He's like, here's some money for your family for what your husband did. She's like, I don't want your money. Shuts the door in his face. Harry Belafonte wanders off, and director of Money Plane, Andrew Lawrence, stands in the playground staring at him, thinking, what is really different between us? We're not so different, you and I. And the movie cuts to black and it's credits. And that is the plot of this movie. There's a lot of just business in the middle. It's all just business. There's no plot, no theme, no character building. It's just business. It's like Travolta's like goes to this place to try and get money. It doesn't work. He goes to another place trying to get money. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Stuart is leaning back in his chair, holding his mic in his hands.
I'm ready to hit the record button.
No, we got to talk about the impact of this movie. Because this movie made a lot of changes to a society.
Really?
It did not.
Tell me about all these changes.
So this movie has a 24% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a little generous if you ask me.
Had a what on Rotten Tomatoes?
24%.
That's a little generous.
It's a little generous, based on 33 reviews. Got a C on Cinema Score.
What the fuck?
Next to nobody saw this movie. It was steamrolled by Toy Story at the box office.
Oh, man.
Hardly gathered any media attention. It was a blip on the radar for Travolta's comeback. Like, no one talked about this. It was all... Everyone was talking about, how big Pulp Fiction was, and they were very quickly talking about how big Broken Arrow and Get Shorty were afterward. No one talked about this.
Do you think that this was shot, like, during post-production of Pulp Fiction?
That is very much what I think. I think it was either that or right after Pulp Fiction came out. And this seemed probably like a good role for Travolta at the time. He's like, yeah, this seems like a good idea.
It just sounds like a role that John Travolta would have taken in the beginnings era, in like the late 80s, early 90s.
Well, this is, once again, his attempt at being like, hey, I'm a real actor. It's just a holdover from that mindset he had around the Chains of Gold era. And thankfully, this movie doesn't really have an impact.
Yeah.
No one wants to talk about this movie. Least of all us.
And I wonder, like, what would happen if, like, you asked John Travolta about this movie? What would he say?
He would say never happened.
He said, I don't know what you're talking about.
This is another
security. Get him away from me.
This is another one that his team has done a really good job wiping off the face of the planet.
Yeah, well, they need to.
Yeah, it's
and they've
like
not done a good enough job.
It is the most illegal movie.
If you could still get it on eBay for DVD, for how much money did you pay for it?
$10, something like that.
If you can still get it on eBay for less than $10 on eBay, a DVD, you've not done a good enough job. You've not done a good enough job.
Yeah,
it's just my opinion.
I should not have been. This needs to be a Eyes of an Angel style thing where I have to order a VHS
or a beta disc, a beta tape. But that it was too easy for you to find this movie. It needs to be a lot harder.
I agree.
They need to wipe off its IMDb page.
Yes.
But it's got a poster and everything, man.
They need to invent a time machine, go back in time, and stop this from happening. Back to the Future 4. That's the plot.
Stop White Man's Burden.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No. Thank everyone for listening.
Yeah, this is going to be a short episode, folks.
Yeah. Make sure to tune in next week for our episode on probably Get Shorty. We might have a special episode for you, though. TBD on that one.
Really?
Yes. We will see. So you folks have a little surprise for next week, what you'll be able to listen to. I know it was probably hard to enjoy this episode, but I hope you did.
Believe it, it was harder for us to talk about this episode.
Yes. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. As a reminder, we are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Pop to our Reddit at r/Travolting. Email any comments or questions to travoltingpodcast@gmail.com. Find me on Twitter at Jeff W. Sweeney.
I don't want to give out my social media info after talking about this movie.
Do not watch White Man's Burden online.
Do not watch White Man's Burden.
But take the opportunity to educate yourself.
Yes.
The internet is a valuable tool. Please use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Special thanks to Rebecca Johnson for our graphic design and Michael Van Bodegum Smith for our theme music. Yeah. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.